pull up to the mic a little bit, and I'm almost gonna kiss this.
Gotta get my dates and times and URLs correct.
You got headphones on? Are they not over there?
You understand me that one right there?
This is to this
Oh.
mic. Does he need headphones, Sean? Does he need them?
Yeah, he's gonna need them. Are there any? There should be more in there. Right?
Oh,
You know, just unplug those
Oh.
and I'll just plug it in right over here.
yeah.
I think I'm gonna need that adapter that was in too. Thank you.
It'll go by very quickly. And Sean, you can hear me okay through the mask?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear yourself in your headphones? Hear each other in your headphones?
Yep, I got volume in the headphones.
Okay. Give me, yeah, give me a countdown. We're rock and roll, man. Good afternoon. You are listening to the Financial Promise Radio Show, 30 Minutes of Power with Jason Fields. And today, you all know I love CEOs on the show. I got a dear friend, brother I just met, and we are working on some great things. Henry Schwartz, the founder and CEO of MobCraft Brewery. And
Yeah, thanks.
And Henry, before we get started, you and I met, and I didn't know, I didn't know of you guys, and then I came and I saw the location, and I thought it was fantastic. And is this the second location, or because you were in Madison, do you still have a spot in Madison as well?
No, this is our only location right now. We kickstarted everything off in Madison and really, started building our business there. And when we needed to move out of the facility that we were sharing, we looked to Milwaukee to find a spot and wound up in Walker's Point.
Okay, so for all of my Milwaukee people, this is Wisconsin, so we love brews and cheese and brats. Where can people go? Give us the address and tell us a little bit about it, because you guys are doing some amazing stuff there, man.
Yeah, the address is 505 South 5th Street. It's just south of downtown. If you cross the 6th Street Bridge past the Harley Museum, you hit a roundabout where there's Conajitos, the Iron Horse Hotel, Great Lakes Distillery, and we're right on that same roundabout. So kind of the north side of Walker's Point.
And you guys have specialty brews. I mean, these are your own batches. This is your own stuff.
Yep, we launched as a crowdsourced brewery. So when we wanted to start a brewery, we knew we needed to be a little different than everybody else out there. And we thought, why not turn the ideas of beer fans into actual products? So for the last 7 years, every month we've been brewing a new beer based off the crowd's ideas, hence the mob. The mob is the people behind the beers, the craft, us. And then if you see our logo, there's two speech bubbles coming together, and then that's the beers that we create.
So people come there and they can give you ideas for a new beer.
Mm-hmm.
Do they get to share in the? Do they get to share in the profits?
Yeah, well, there are some great perks. If your beer wins, you get to drink your beer free for life. So
That's a good deal.
That's pretty sweet. So we do this once during COVID. It's been once every other month. We've been doing a crowdsourced brew, but the winner gets to bring all of their friends in. We have a big party in the back. You actually help brew the beer, throw in all the ingredients, learn about the process, and then obviously once the beer is done fermenting, we have a little release party and share the joy of that new beer coming out.
You know what, man? I love the idea and what you guys are doing, and we're going to get into some of the stuff that you and I are working on, the Lager and Listen, because I think that is when we met. I just became a big fan, and we talked, and we've been talking, and I love the fact that you and I are cool, and our friendship is growing based on, I think, this level of humanity and leadership that you've shown. Before we get into that, I always like to give people, particularly folks who are listening, as a CEO, man, I have to imagine it was some ups and downs starting this business. What kept you going?
Well, I mean, talk about ups and downs starting the business. We're in a down right now, like having a global pandemic in a business that heavily relies on people coming into your establishment. Like, man, we're in one of the biggest downs that we've got.
Yeah.
But what keeps it going is passion.
Mm-hmm.
You start a business because you love doing whatever it is that you do. And that passion for me initially was brewing beer because I liked the process and I had a lot of fun doing it. I am still very passionate about it, but what I've really grown into being passionate about now is fostering this team that works with us. Like just we had a 1 year anniversary the other week, and she the woman posted a post on our Slack channel to all of our other employees saying how grateful and how much fun she has working at this business. And for me to just see that things are no longer my ideas that are happening within my business, it's people's ideas that are our employees, and they're stressed sometimes, but really enjoying their work. And so seeing that happen, seeing that whole team just thrive and buzz is what's like, I might have a difficult task to accomplish throughout the day, but I know that there's a whole another bunch of staff working for us that are all working and overall enjoying their lives.
Now, what made you get into the? I mean, this is Miller, Todd. This is Milwaukee. This is, and so you didn't just wake up and go, I want to compete with the big boys. I mean, what made you go, this is it for me, and we can be successful doing this in a town where it's a beer place, and so it's very competitive.
Yeah, well, it's very bizarre, and it's funny that you mentioned Miller being here, because I think that's part of the reason why there weren't too many craft breweries in Milwaukee until like 2015, 2016 is when the craft beer boom really hit Milwaukee, whereas it was in 2010, 11, 12 in a lot of other cities around the U.S.
Okay.
So I think being in the shadow of Miller, a lot of people thought that, like, oh, I don't want to start a brewery in Milwaukee. I don't think there's as much direct competition as people think.
Okay.
Amongst individual craft breweries, we have the same customer that we're competing for, but we're really friendly. We think that a rising tide helps all of us.
Yeah.
So when there are more breweries making quality beer on a local level, partnering up with local community members, partnering up with other local businesses for ingredients, it's a part that like really raises the whole entire economy. I look at our brewery, we are in Walker's Point on the weekends. In non-COVID times, we have a ton of people driving up from Illinois to come to a brewery tour, and they might come into Milwaukee just to go to see 3 or 4 different breweries and then spend the night and then head back down. So we've really built this like beer tourism in Milwaukee, all amongst directly competing businesses.
That's awesome, man. And it's funny you mentioned we believe a rising tide. I laugh at that because another dear friend of mine, Pete Dulcamere, who's the chief scientist at Kimberly-Clark, we did a presentation, and it's around some of the stuff you and I have talked about, and that's the name of it. That's our philosophy: a rising tide lifts all boats, not just yachts. And so it's funny, and that's how I knew you and I were going to hit off, because we're on the same wavelength. I want to talk about the concept lager and listen, and I wrote a book, and I'm putting the finishing touches, which is again a very good reason why I love that me and you are. We're working on some things, and the title of the book was Leadership in Chaotic Times, and you are an example of that, because your lager and listen, first off, tell our audience what it is, and then let's get into it, because I want people to know that there are leaders who looked at what's happening throughout the country, and even in Milwaukee here, and said, you know what, I don't want to just talk about stuff. I want to find solutions. I want to bring people together. So you came up with lager and listen.
Yeah, so it took a long time to actually bring it from ideation to like an authentic event. So it was right after George Floyd was murdered. We thought as a company, and we were up to like 3 a.m. trying to figure out what do we post on the internet, because everybody's looking for a statement. You put out a statement. And we wanted to, say something and not just be complacent.
Right.
But, that's what every business was doing. Here, put out a statement. What do you feel about this? And your feelings don't really matter. Your action matters. So I thought, as myself, a white man who owns a brewery, who has a beard, whose clientele is predominantly white men who have beards, I don't have an authentic voice in this concept. I need to become educated. I need to go out and figure out. I need to go out and make connections before I can launch something that's an actual meaningful initiative. So I reached out to a bunch of resources within my network and the Brewers Association, that they have some diversity resources and really awesome thought leaders in diversity in the beer world. So I was able to learn a little bit there, find some more good connections, just continue to meet people who had the same interest in wanting to right the wrongs that have been happening in our country for so long. And about a month or so into that, we started working with MKE Black a lot more. In a lot of the events that we did at the brewery, working with more Black-owned businesses, and I just instantly had a great connection with Ayrton, who's their director of outreach.
Yep.
And so I said, Ayrton, do you want to help me out with this lager and listen concept? I want to be a microphone for, dialogue around racial injustice in our society. So me as MobCraft, I don't want to say, here's a ton of resources to go read everybody. I want to get people on board, do a panel, start talking, and then give people some homework to go out and actually make some change in their community. And as I started thinking, like, what are we going to talk about? Who are we going to speak with? I was just thinking of all the different sectors in my life that I've been interacting in, in education, in startup finance, in the brewing world, in the bar business. And I thought, man, this is a problem in every sector that I've experienced in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So this Lager and Listen series that we've launched is going to take place once a month. We did the first one in early October. We'll be holding volume 2 on November 10th at 7 p.m. And these are listening sessions on Zoom that we have a panelist of, experts. We discuss a singular topic and the racial injustice in that topic. And we field questions ahead of time, and it ends up just being a really nice dialogue, eye-opening for both sides that are in discussion, and just a good chance to talk to each other.
I think one of the things that, when we sat down and you said, you mentioned it today, to give people homework. And for me, that's an expectation that everybody's going to come to the table genuinely in their most authentic form, and not just talk about stuff, but see where they can fit in and see what can they do to contribute to, moving Milwaukee forward. And what I love about what you've done and what you are doing is, a lot of people and a lot of entities and companies, whether they be government, public, private, everyone will say, hey, we should make a statement, we should do this, we should do that. But rarely do you see the action behind it. Mm-hmm. And that action starts with getting people to come together and really have a genuine dialogue about it. Because as you said, there are a lot of things that touch our lives, whether it be education. I know the one we're doing next month, startup funding and capital, and because those are communities you've been in. And so, I love the fact that you're saying, we need to really figure this out. And that's I don't think people really get that that's good business as well. You know what I mean? Because I think and you correct me if I'm wrong, when you're looking for a client, as you said, you hinted to it, you said, you look, my circle, white men with beards. And we talked about this when we sat down. Why aren't more African Americans drink beer? And you said, why don't we have, I think you put the microbreweries in the inner cities. Why don't we have this stuff? And you literally said, why can't we help change this stuff? And you didn't look at it as, if competition comes, I need to worry about that. Mm-hmm. You looked at it as, what can we do to make sure Wisconsin is growing? I mean, that's, a lot of times that's a big step, man. Why were you so comfortable doing that?
Well, I think money should always be an afterthought. You can't take it to the grave, right?
Right.
And realistically, I would much rather have happy people than rich people.
Right.
So, it didn't even cross my mind, too, until, after our first Lager and Listen, that, this is a whole new customer demographic that I haven't marketed towards. And, we could make more revenue off of it. Mm-hmm. But the first goal is, creating inclusivity and, being able to interact. Like we had there's a beer that's been brewed by about 1,600 breweries around the U.S. called Black is Beautiful. Mm-hmm. And we just brewed this beer this past week. And instead of just brewing it, we partnered up with MKE Black. And Ayrton and I came up with the idea of reaching out to individual businesses that were within their membership and saying, hey, you can come in for an hour time slot and participate in the brew day. So we had about 45 different people from different businesses come through the brewery, hang out, check out how you make beer, have a couple beers if people wanted to, and we got to make this beer together. So instead of just MobCraft brewing one beer, MobCraft got to brew a beer with 45 different people, from a Black-owned business community that we hadn't done much work with in the past.
Why do you think there is such a, why do you think you have that outlook, but yet for so long, I think we've all talked about it, but we haven't gotten it right?
Yeah, I know I am the way I am because I am. I don't really know why I'm not, but I kind of trace it back to just, my upbringing. I grew up in Colorado. I was raised by my mom after my dad passed away. We spent a lot of time overseas. I got to see a lot of different cultures. I was telling you last time we got together, I lost my first tooth in the Himalayas. So being surrounded by diverse people who, eat different things, look different, sound different, enjoy different things, have different ways of life. From my earliest memories, that was just part of how the world worked, and I always had positive interactions.
Right.
You know, we were in South Africa a year after apartheid was lifted, you know, and just that's a crazy environment to imagine being in as a like 7-year-old kid.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't have bad experiences from any of those instances. You know, I can remember and I, you know, draw back to all of the positive things, and you know, all that is just, you know, being joyful and happy with people.
You know, I've always said this, and you and I talked about this before, and it was a realization to me. I was talking about it with my wife that we still have this, you know, culture. And when I say culture, I'm not talking about race. I mean, because it's all races, it's all ages and demographics. This culture of Wisconsin and Milwaukee is the only place, you know, and you don't get to until you get out and start seeing and experiencing different people of different cultures, different internationalities. You begin to see how closed off we are. And here we tend to be in our own silos, which is what I love about, you know, what you're doing, saying, you know what, here's a role I can play. We don't need to be in our silos. You know, what do you want to happen out of Library and Listen, man?
You know, I would love to, you know, in a year from now, you know, be able to look back and say, you know, we've worked we've held 12 different sessions. We've talked about, you know, a similar issue in each one of these different silos, but we've linked them, you know, and just going through 2 of these, I've probably made, I mean, countless connections that are helpful to my business, helpful to me personally, just from hosting 2 Lager and Listen sessions. You know, just being able to connect with people over a new reason. My previous connections were, hey, you want to get a beer and talk about beer, right? I can talk with beer people and that's it. And this is really a great way to be able to open that more and talk about, you know, more opportunities to work with other businesses. Like a great example is all the businesses at Sherman Phoenix.
Yeah.
We've, like a whole group came over to the Black is Beautiful Brew Day. And so we started wrangling off all these different ways that we could work together and help promote their businesses, include them in some of our initiatives that we've got going on. So just things that you wouldn't find in your normal course of your daily life. And I want, you know, not just us to do that, but then everybody who participates to be able to take that same feeling of, wow, I made this cool connection, and take that back out to their silo.
You know, and I think that's the beauty of it. When we see things like Wisconsin or Milwaukee is the #1 segregated place in America, where we see all these horrible statistics, it really starts with everybody saying, okay, if that's the case, what do we need to do to change it? Was there not fear, but were you concerned that how it may be received? Were you concerned that, you know, what if this doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've learned more in the 2 or 3 months trying to pull this together, you know, about, I mean, I don't even know what I've learned more about, but I can feel, initially I had this anxiousness inside me of, am I going to be offensive? And am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to sound fake? Like I'm just trying to have some other ulterior motive?
Right.
And those are all fears inside me that I didn't want to, you know, jump the gun with. But then, you know, right off the bat with Ayrton, I, you know, approached this, first off, I pronounced his name wrong, you know, so you feel like an idiot, right? You know, and so, like, okay, how do you, so I found like name pronunciation websites for names that are foreign to me that I haven't heard, you know, so I could have a little bit more confidence in who I'm speaking with.
You know, you and I, we talked about that when we met, you brought that up, and just walk us through the psyche, because you said, listen, you took the responsibility of, you know, trying to make sure you do it right. Walk me through that, man.
Well, it comes back to experiences that I've had abroad. You know, I might not know the language of the country that I'm in, but if you can say 1 or 2 words, you get a smile instead of oh, there's another American tourist.
Right.
You know, so I felt like that same thing comes off. I'm trying. You know, I'm putting a little bit more effort into this than just no effort. So, yeah, that's it.
And so when you when you went and you hooked up with Ayrton, I mean, I would imagine, because I think that we're a lot of us are going through that. You know, people don't want to be offensive and they want to get it right, and you know, and a lot of that happens, I think, when you're in this pandemic, or we're not just pandemic, but when you're in this kind of environment in this day and age, because this is different for a lot of us. I mean, the racial unjust on top of the pandemic, what it's forcing a lot of us to do, I think, is really come to terms with who we are individually, and then where do we really fit into this global society? Are we really trying to be part of the solution, or will we sit by quietly and just watch everybody else talk about it? So I love the fact that you that you said you're doing this lager and listening. And how many of these do you want to see done? I mean, how many of these are you shooting for?
Well, I would hope that at some point we're taking things off of Zoom and we get together in person.
Yeah.
Because that's an ultimate goal. When you can lock eyes with somebody, when you can shake a hand, when you can give a high five and cheers a beer, that's the best part. You've created a friendship at that point. Until the pandemic is gone and we have to practice safe social distancing, things will be on Zoom, and I want to keep doing this once a month. It's not like this is my whole entire business, but
Right.
I want to be able to have this, plan it, execute it, get press out there, get media interested in it, get more people on board, and then continue to learn from each one. After the first session, I didn't think that we would have so many people from the Black community on board listening to learn from the panelists.
Right.
I was thinking this is going to be me talking to my audience, trying to get an authentic voice to point, my predominantly white audience in the right direction. But it ended up being this great culmination of a collaboration, that there were the same amount of young people as old people, the same amount of people who are looking to learn versus learning how to give advice.
Right.
It was just this really cool, serene feeling to see so many different walks of life interacting with us.
How many people did you have on like your first one?
I think there were 50 some RSVPs and about the same amount of little screens on the Zoom.
I mean, that's a lot of people for a Zoom, because me and my wife we're on Zoom. So 50 people is a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great turnout. Why should people get involved, man? Why should people, if they hear it on the show, they'll be following you now. I'm pretty sure some people will come down to the brewery. Why should people jump on board a lot of this?
I was thinking about that, and if you're questioning why you should get on board, that's why you should get on board. No, seriously,
that's really
I thought of it like somebody would think, why is MobCraft, this brewery, going out and trying to do this? Well, that's the reason you should go look at it, because you should see, you should hear. I think a lot of people haven't heard perspective. You can hear things on the news, but every time you remove yourself one step from it, it's less and less powerful, less and less authentic, right?
Yeah.
So this is something that's happening in your community. These are people you'll see walking around. These are people you'll, potentially run into out in, at stores. You'll see on, who you'll have mutual connections. These are people in your backyard.
I was thinking about that from a media perspective, which is why when we met, I was like, dude, you got to come on the show, because you see a lot of the stuff in the media. And a lot of times we're not highlighting the positive things people are doing. We're not highlighting this new generation and the things they're doing. We're always highlighting, and I don't want to say negative, but we're always highlighting the stuff that doesn't give us, okay, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, we've launched press releases for this. We haven't had any, major media papers or anything pick it up.
Nobody.
Emails have been opened, but it's like let's do something positive, and let's
Right.
talk about us moving stuff forward instead of just all the negative side of it.
Does that
So,
make you feel a certain way, man? I mean,
it makes me want to try more.
I love you, bro. I love your attitude, man. And I think this is why. And one of the things I said in some of the book I wrote was, you got to find the right team. And I think a lot of people you have to get around the right people, because when you do that, you will manifest, I think, other like-minded individuals. You and I don't know, I think Dana we got an email or something, and you and I were playing for, it took us about, maybe a month to get together, maybe?
Yeah.
And as soon as we met, we hit it off. And I love the fact that it is based on positivity. It is forcing people to get to a point where, hey, I can sit on the sideline, talk about these things, or, as you said before, if I got a question, why don't I just be a part of it? Why don't I come and see it? So no one should be afraid of this. People should look at it as a challenge. What are you looking forward out of this next panel discussion, so I know what to say?
Well, one thing that I want to do is reach out to some people that I've interacted with in the tech sphere, some of my entrepreneurship professors from college, and I'd like to see some more students jump on board with this.
Yeah.
I went to Whitewater, which is real close. A lot of people from Milwaukee go to Whitewater,
Yeah.
So interacted pretty heavily with that school and their entrepreneurship program, and then the Wisconsin Technology Council, and all entrepreneurship as a young person. So I want to get this message out to some younger people who might just be starting their careers, to have them jump on board. But then from the session itself, I just love having tough questions
Yeah.
posed, and then having good answers to them. I mean, in our prep session, there were so many times that there were things that you said, I was like, oh man, now how do I draft a question, around your response to get you to give that same response, because it's so good and it's so eye-opening. And what I think people don't really understand and sometimes take for granted is your stories and your experiences are so powerful.
Okay.
I think the first time like that I got asked to do some speaking to students in classes, I was like, why would somebody want me to speak to the class? Like, what information do I have to share? And it's experiences.
Well, man, as we close out, tell us again, where can they come, taste the sample the brews, participate, and where can they reach, or how can they hop on board the next?
So the link to the RSVP, we do an RSVP for the Lager and Listen sessions just so we can ask questions ahead of time. And then we'll send out a link for you to jump on the Zoom. That URL is bit.ly, that's bit.ly/Lager and Listen, all spelled out. Or you can Google MobCraft Lager and Listen, and it pops up. It's going to be held on the 10th of November at 7 p.m., so still plenty of time to register. And then if you want to come and grab a lager so you can have one as you're listening in, our brewery is at 505 South 5th Street, and that is in the Walker's Point neighborhood, just south of downtown, kind of by the Harley Museum. Got 25 beers on taps and a pizzeria in there.
That's great. You have been listening to the Financial Problems 30 Minutes of Power with Jason Fields. I want to thank my dear friend Henry Schwartz, founder and CEO of MobCraft Brewery, a visionary, and I know will be back on the show. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.
Oh, awesome.
Thanks, brother.
Wish you could see my smile. It's huge. Oh, man.